Something that I've happened to notice lately is the way the indie film distributor A24 has somewhat changed over the past few years. What started off as a scrappy little film company that was known for picking eclectic small films has grown a lot. This year in particular, I've noticed they seem to release a new movie every few weeks, and I do sometimes wonder how they juggle all these films. It should be noted that while people like to group all the A24 releases together, there are actually two types of films. There are the films they develop and produce from the ground up, like Heretic, Baby Girl, and Death of a Unicorn, and there are those that they acquire after they're finished, usually at film festivals, which include The Brutalist, Friendship, and Queer. Nonetheless, cinephiles tend to view A24 as a curated collection of director-driven films with unique sensibilities. There's even a cult that sees it as a mark of quality. They have released a lot of really good movies, but there are times when the quality has been a bit spotty. I think of something like Death of a Unicorn, which had a promising concept, but I felt the story fizzled out after a while. Other recent films, like Y2K, Opus, and Materialist, also felt like this. I started watching them intrigued at the story possibilities, but as they played on and more was revealed, I gradually lost interest, and they did not stick the landing for me. However, A24's also released films that did manage to hold my interest throughout, thanks to their compelling characters, creative ideas, and solid direction, like Heretic and I Saw the TV Glow. Why? Well, because like any distributor and production company, they'll have movies that land with you and others that don't. I've long found it odd that people would prop up A24 as a distributor that will always release something you like. If you like the movie, that's usually because the filmmakers delivered in making one that satisfied you rather than because of the logo at the start. When I get ready to watch a movie they've produced or picked up, I don't think, oh, it's the new A24 movie. I think, it's a new movie from this director I like, or this is the director's first movie, I hope I like it, or the concept for this intrigues me, I'm curious where I land on it. Nonetheless, as I said before, A24 has gotten bigger, not only with the number of movies they release annually, but even with some of the projects they invest in. Civil War became their biggest budget film at the time, costing $50 million. As a result, they treated it like how a big studio would handle one of their blockbusters, with heavy promotion, a big IMAX release, and trying to appeal it to a wide audience, including emphasizing the action aspects of the plot. And they did pull it off, as Civil War made $127 million worldwide, which currently ranks second behind Everything Everywhere All at Once on their list of top grossers. Civil War is the kind of movie A24 probably would not have produced 10 years ago, but they have now built enough of a portfolio and net worth to make it possible. They have some other bigger budget films coming up alongside their smaller pickups. Marty Supreme, a movie starring Timothée Chalamet as a ping pong player, is rumored to have a $70 million budget, and The Smashing Machine, which is Dwayne Johnson playing wrestler Mark Kerr, is also said to have a significant budget. A24 has even started diving into intellectual property. A few years ago, they acquired the rights to produce a television series prequel to Friday the 13th. Titled Crystal Lake, it recently started filming and will debut on Peacock. It was also announced that they had signed Alex Garland to direct a film adaptation of the video game Elden Ring. A24 basically seems to be functioning similar to how the major Hollywood studios used to do things, where they would have a few big tempo releases a year, and then the rest of the slate would be throwing the dice at smaller and mid-budget films and seeing what breaks out. Of the big studios, only Sony Pictures still does it that way, while the likes of Disney and Warner Brothers primarily focus on massive potential blockbusters. Now, sometimes it can feel like A24 has a little too much on their plate. Like I said, they now seem to release a new movie every few weeks, and it can be tricky juggling all of those. A particularly odd release strategy they pulled was of Sing Sing. They picked up the film after it got a strong reaction at the Toronto International Film Festival. They then gave it a limited release in the summer, and had originally planned to eventually expand it wide. However, even though Sing Sing got decent numbers in the few theaters it played at, its widest release was only on 191 screens, and theaters that initially thought they were getting it never did. They also never put it on digital or physical media after its summer run, despite there being interest from viewers. A24 would then bring it back to theaters shortly before the Oscar nominations were announced, but their treatment of it was very bizarre. Of course, they are not the only game in town, as Neon has also become a distributor for the kinds of movies A24 is specialized in. They even almost acquired The Brutalist, but Brady Corbet ultimately went with A24. Neon has found success with horror films and award-winning dramas and comedies, and like them, also releases a lot of movies annually. This year, they seem to go on a buying spree at the Cannes Film Festival, and I honestly have no idea how they can handle all these films they're supposedly aiming for the same cinephile audience. But back to A24, they're certainly in an interesting period now as they expand and get bigger, and I'm curious what their future is. Of course, not everything they put out will be to your or my liking, but that's just the nature of film distribution. As long as they pick up and produce worthwhile projects, make people aware of them, and give them decent releases, I think A24 will continue to thrive for a while.